Hi, I'm Liz Cully, and welcome back to Cool, Cool, Cool. Each week, I give you a glimpse into what I think is cool and chat with a ton of people that are definitely cool. No topic is off bounds unless I guess it's not cool. Welcome to Cool, Cool, Cool. Oh, I feel great. I mean, honestly, the only reason why I do feel good is because after all of these years, I finally just got gifted a Biologique Rocher facial, and my
Oh,
skin has never looked better in my
never
entire
looks
life.
better.
It's like I'm getting close to, and actually we have so much to talk about, but the most important thing I have to ask you just before everybody, starts to like log off because nobody has a fucking attention span. Like, are we doing serums for those eyebrows? Like, was this God's gift to you? Like, like I need to understand because I don't have bad eyebrows, but I want them. And thankfully, the plucking of the early aughts did not destroy me like it did Pamela Anderson, which like I have a lot of thoughts and feelings about, even though I don't comment on women's appearances. But what's up? Do you like have a fucking serum? Like, please don't gatekeep. Tell me everything.
No, I definitely won't gatekeep. So everybody loves to ask me what holds my eyebrows up, and I always
Mm-hmm.
answer the sheer grace of God. And
Oh,
that's
got
the
it.
truth. And no, Tresemme hairspray is my secret.
Is it?
Any sort of eyebrow serum you see at Sephora is not strong enough for me. I mean, this.
No, but you don't use like a serum to grow.
Oh, no, 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 no. No, this is the result of childhood bullying and
Mm.
waxing my eyebrows once every 3 months, I want to say. I tweeze in between so that I can have a social life. If I had a unibrow, no one would speak to me. But it's really wild. I think people have been into thick eyebrows for what, almost like a decade now, but I still have the mentality I had when I was in middle school and high school, which is that anytime I walk into a room, all anyone can stare at is my eyebrows, which a lot of the time is true. But now it's out of envy, and before it was out of disgust. So it's
I
fun.
mean, it's major envy. Like if I saw you at an event, I'd be like, we need to discuss this. Like, what's happening?
Well, it's a great
Also, let
conversation
me
starter.
let me do a quick ring light in the middle.
Go
Do you
for
love
it.
that?
I told you I'm cheating because I have direct window access. But yeah, it's fantastic. I'm a huge fan of stranger danger. Like I love nothing more than leaving my house and getting caught up in a conversation with someone I've never met before. And it turns
Me too. That's why we're here today.
my eyebrows.
I love strangers.
Strangers are the best. Strangers are what make life worth living. And you live in LA and no one talks to strangers. So if you're into stranger danger, I don't know how you survived 13 years in LA. At least I feel
You
like
know
each
what?
other.
My wife always says, she's like, oh God, it's like, we don't really go out that much anymore. But when we first started dating, we'd go up and we'd like saddle up to a bar and I'd like find the least interesting person to then cozy up to for the
Right.
next 3 hours and completely ignore her. And she's just like, dude, that used to fucking kill me. I'm like, yeah, but here's the thing. It's like even last night, I always am reminded because it's so different in LA because there's the driving and the parking and the fucking, yeah. Like it's just such a shit show that I don't go out. And when I do, it's for work. But last night, I got like the best stories. I was with Kelly Catrone, friend of the pod, basically my sister. And I'm like listening to this guy who couldn't, I mean, I don't know who he was. He claimed to have been some relation to Bob Marley, which really tracks for Kelly. And he was telling us how she basically, like, during the fucking Rodney King riots, they were all in town for some event and then got locked in the Chateau Marmont for 9 days and like racked up like a literal 6-figure tab. And it was, and nobody left the hotel. And it was like the best time of their life. And like, those are the stories that I need strangers
Yeah.
like to tell me. Do
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah. That's
Or just like that they hate their mom and like blah, 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 blah. Like all the regular
all
stuff,
of those stories have merits, merit and equal value. No, but I also think that you clearly have the kind of personality that's boisterous enough to go out into the world and make that happen. The reason I have not ever moved to LA for longer than 3 months at a time is A, the walking problem is a serious thing for me. I know it's passe at this point, but B, I feel like everyone always looks at me sideways when I try to strike up a conversation at a bar or.
Well, no, they're going to do exactly what they do to me, which is what you did to me and say, are you from New York?
Yeah.
Every time.
Yeah.
Every time. I don't go more than a few days with somebody out. Like somebody, you're from New York. I'm like, no, I'm not from New York. I lived in New York for a long time. Half my life is in New York, but I'm also just interested. LA is a tricky place, man. It's a lot of people come here because they were the most interesting person in their little town in the middle of nowhere. And then
Exact
they
same thing
get
with New
here.
York. Exact same thing with New York. Now I feel like New York is overpopulated with people who are the weird kid in their high school. A lot
Well,
of people in
that's
New York
true.
have left and gone to
That's true.
LA, actually, as much as I hate to admit that.
I know. Well, that's why it's kind of nice being on the east side because it's like we're all basically derivative of New York in some fashion. I mean, you love strangers so much that you essentially based your podcast all around
I did.
stranger danger questions.
I did. Yeah.
And I really respect that. And we're going to do like a little inside baseball. And then I want to hear some of your favorite stories. But like, and I say this to the listeners, and you know that I love you deeply. You know, we have a bond. But UGC content is like not it. Like, I get real squirmy if I'm hosting an event, which you've hosted so many, and they're like, let's make sure we do a Q&A. I'm like, no, 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 no. Because a lot of people can't articulate a question in a way that is made for content, whether that's live or digitally. So you really took a risk in basing your podcast, which is wildly successful, on stranger questions. How was that? It feels like a lot of extra work. Or was it like, did you feel like your listenership really understood the assignment?
Yeah, I mean the podcast is fucking exhausting, and I used to kind of be secretive about that, but I had to take an entire year off from doing it because I was so burnt out. And when I came back, I was like, okay, I have to do things differently this time. And part of that is radical transparency in all ways, not just about all the ways in which I'm a fuck up, which gives other people permission to be a fuck up, but in the ways where if I'm going to hold up my end of the bargain to make this show happen, everybody else needs to as well. I have higher expectations for my listeners and my contributors now, which I'm grateful for. But basically, the way the show works is that I will read something or watch something or meet someone insane when I leave my house, and it will spark an idea that I want to learn more about. And I will then cast for anonymous contributors on Instagram. I'm getting to TikTok now. I'm a late boomer. So I'm just starting to get into TikTok, and hopefully we can cast more there. But I will cast on Instagram.
I'm sorry, by the way. Welcome. I'm a late bloomer of TikTok, and like somehow I'm already shadow banned. I would just like, welcome.
I'm shadow banned too, but it's because I've spread a widespread rumor that Melania is Donald Trump's dom, and he's her.
Well, I know, which I love. Well, we're not even, you're going so quick. I'm not even there. I mean, I'm obsessed.
We'll get there. I'll put a pin in that, and then we can come back to it.
It's also like, it doesn't feel, I think a lot of rumors are
true,
rooted in truth. And so, because everything you laid out, I was like, wow, am I watching like 2020 or am I watching like Ali's Instagram? Like, where am I? But yeah, it does line up. I'm like, when you put it that way, Ali, right.
I want to be known as conspiracy theory Barbara Walters. That's how I'm positioning myself. So we'll come back to this. I know there's a lot. That's what happens when I don't take my ADD medication. So I cast for contributors on Instagram. They give me their emails. I send each contributor a questionnaire about the topic that they are discussing with me. And I tell them the questionnaire is just a guide. You can tell your story however you want to tell it, but it's parameters so that it doesn't go completely off the walls. Ideally, it always ends up going completely off the walls. Then they will send back voice memos or written answers that I will read out for them. But, you know, I have a rule that I try to enforce that your contribution can't be more than 10 minutes long. And people end up sending me 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes. And I try not to take that for granted. I realize it's because I'm asking them things that they've never really been granted permission to speak about before. So, of course, it's like going to church and confessing. And I want to be mindful of that. But it is completely exhausting to have to basically edit down trauma dumping for content purposes while also being mindful of this person's emotional sensitivities and the trust that they are giving to me to handle their story with care. So if I didn't love what I do so much, if I didn't care about the stories I was telling so much, it would be very difficult to make the show because I am not just playing like circus ringleader, conspiracy theory Barbara Walters. I'm also kind of playing free therapist. And
and you're producing. I mean, that's quite a bit of production. And I think it's so funny from a work perspective, you know, whatever. I was in a meeting the other day and someone very innocently was just like, well, whatever, like, we'll just like start a podcast. I'm like, respectfully,
no,
I have been doing this for many years and I'm even like relatively 6 years is like newish to the game. Like, you know what I mean? I'm like looking, I'm like, yo, I have tried so many formats with this show and it is exhausting. I mean, I used to have 4 or 5 different interviews in one episode and I'm like, oh wow, this takes like almost 3 weeks to do. And I actually don't have the time to do it. So I just want to give you what do the kids say? Your flowers.
Thank you. I
Which
always say daps because, again, I'm a New York boomer.
oh, daps.
Give me my daps
Okay.
for their due, and then
Okay.
we dap.
Did you ever have like a favorite, like a story that came in and you're like, this is going to be pure magic? And it's one that you like reaffirmed why you created the format that you did?
Yes. So every time I cast for an episode, I always think to myself, this is going to be the topic that I have no contributors for because it's too personal, it's too niche, my expectations are too high. And that has never happened once. Every single time I've cast for an episode, there have been at least a small handful of people who have the experience to contribute to it, which has really made me realize that there is no such thing as weird. There is no such thing as crazy. There is no such thing as really living an unconventional life because it turns out that all of us are living unconventional lives. We're just too afraid to talk about it. But to get really specific, my favorite episode of all time is actually the first Anonymous Confessions episode that I ever did, which was about Soul Cycle. I shat all
Yes.
over Soul Cycle in 2021 when I was.
You shat all over, like on a bike.
Oh, no, not literally, although one of my contributors did shit
Yeah, I knew
all
it.
over
I had
the bike. No, emotionally, mentally, intellectually, in terms of spreading gossip, we shat all over them. But basically, long story short, I was home with COVID for like the 4th time. And I had read that Soul Cycle instructors had cut the vaccine line because they claimed to be educators. And I was like, that is so wild and mentally ill. I wonder if anybody who follows me ever worked for Soul Cycle so that we could just gossip in my DMs about it. I put out this ad, if you will, and I got dozens of people who used to work for Soul Cycle in every single facet of the company. I'm talking instructors, like famous ones. I'm talking admin. I'm talking corporate. I'm talking janitors, like literally everybody. And so originally I just, wanted to shoot the breeze with them and like get some gossip. But then I realized that there was a bigger story to tell here. And the only way that any of these people were willing to tell their story on a larger platform was if I didn't dox them because of NDAs and just being terrified of the company as a whole. So that's where the idea of doing Anonymous Confessions came from. And I cobbled together this episode. I did not know what I was doing. I was still very much learning the production ropes. But if you listen to that episode, it's such a mess from a production POV, but there's so much unbelievable information in there. And I couldn't believe how all of these people, without me having the Anonymous Confessions format already, kind of blindly trusted me with this really intense information that could potentially get me and them in a lot of trouble. It just made me realize that like people are very desperate for safe spaces. And if you provide that to them, a little goes a long way and you end up killing 2 birds with 1 stone. You make people feel better about their choices in their lives and you get really tremendous content in the process.
I'm dead. I mean, you know what's amazing about COVID is I really made a promise to myself. I was one of those girls. I mean, also COVID aged me beyond repair, but I was like up at fucking 6 a.m. going to Barry's boot camp or Soul Cycle. And like, no matter how hungover I was or how like depleted I was, or you name it, like wouldn't miss a fucking Y7 hip hop yoga class. COVID came around. I still worked out. LA, we were like all working out outside.
Hiking.
You know what I'm never going to fucking do for the rest of my life? I'm never going to fucking go to Barry's boot camp again. I don't give a fuck about Soul Cycle. Soul Cycle can get fucked. I didn't even really like it that much. The one instructor I did like, talk about like craziness. I liked her because she was like this little tiny blonde white girl, but she would play the kind of music I like, which is like Jeezy. Like, or like Mobb Deep. And I'm like, okay, like fuck Tyler. Okay, allegedly.
Okay, allegedly.
So I don't know this to be true, but this was the rumor in Los Angeles. The rumor in Los Angeles is that Tyler Perry came to her class at the West Hollywood Soul Cycle and was like horrified at the music that she played. So she went off the fuck and she got in trouble, which is a bummer because I loved the music. She went off the fucking deep end and started to like attack all these different writers, lose her fucking mind. She sued Soul Cycle. They sued her. Like all this crazy shit. This is
Wow.
like where I go in my mind. I only bring this up to say that this is like 7 years. This is
Mhm,
before COVID.
mhm.
2:30 in the morning, can't sleep. I'm like, what was her name? I must find her. And I did find her. And she's a crazy Trumper that lives in Orange
Of
County
course.
and hold on, it gets even worse, is a fucking life coach, wellness coach.
Oh my God.
Her website is terrifying. It's like, this is the food that you need to eat to get thin. It's like horribly insane. And I'm like, wow, this is like proving the point that Soul Cycle is literally like a fucking crazy place. My sister is one of the original West Side, Upper New York writers, and like her whole social life,
Mhm,
to
mhm,
this day
mhm.
is all Soul Cycle. I meet people, oh, who's this? Soul Cycle, Soul Cycle. I'm like, you guys have lost your fucking minds. Literally lost your fucking minds. So anyway, I do love that. And I think you're right. People just want to like they just want to like be able to talk shit blindly and just get it off their chest.
Yes, it's like therapy. And like this might be a really hot take, but I actually don't see that much of a difference between like gossiping and going to therapy. I think that gossiping has like highly therapeutic qualities. And I think as long as you're not gossiping in a way that could like actually ruin somebody's life or, you know, actually ruin a good person's life, it's important for us to bond in that way. It's important for us to get things off of our chest. It's important to know that other people share the same controversial opinions that we do. I'm not saying that I go around, you know, talking smack about every single person I've ever met. I don't. But like, I think that there's this kind of holier than thou idea that like, anybody who sits around and gossips is a terrible person. But A, we all do it. And B, what I've seen from doing my podcast and just being out in the world is that it's like the number one way that people, especially women, forge really meaningful bonds with one another. And I almost feel like it's an act of resistance against like people constantly telling women to like sit down and shut up. So that might make me sound like really alt, I don't know, but like I
Honestly, I'm
feel
not religious, but amen. Maybe gossip is my religion and I just don't realize
I
it.
think
Do you know what
everybody
I
feels
mean?
that way and nobody wants to admit it. It's like when you think about the number one way to expedite a really deep and meaningful friendship between two women, how do we do that? Gossip. And it's not necessarily about people, it can be about products, it can be about weight loss, it could be about Ozempic, it can be about Soul Cycle, it could be about literally anything. But I think more people should gossip. I think if more people, especially women, let themselves gossip, we would all be happier.
Great. I gossip all the time and I'm still not happy. So I think that I need
Gossip
to find
more
something
then.
else.
You
I know,
feel
I
Soul
do.
Cycle, so that's a good first step towards happiness.
You were recently in the LA Times, which is under a lot of fire. I don't know if you've
Oh no,
seen
I
that.
didn't. I did not know that.
So the new owner of this is some LA goss. It's not really goss because it's very well documented. But the LA Times really went through like a huge shift. This man bought the LA Times and he's quite conservative and he refused to endorse Kamala Harris as of recently. And it's the first time in LA Times history that they haven't, regardless of political party affiliation, haven't endorsed someone. So anyway, but he did endorse Trump. So there's a lot of news there. But you were in the LA Times
I was.
and as a young, gorgeous woman, we're saying that you've never put filler and Botox in your face. And God bless you, because you really do not seem to have a fucking wrinkle on your gorgeous punum. Tell me how, why, but also like you're only 30.
Mm.
And I say that because I like think we're going to be friends. Like I didn't start Botox before 30. Was that really the point? Was that too many young women are doing Botox and filler before 30? Or are you just like, I'm never doing this for forever?
No, after a certain age, like who wants to look natural? You know what I mean? Like I'm definitely gonna get to a point where I'm gonna get like a full-fledged top to toe mommy makeover and I'm gonna have absolutely no shame about it whatsoever.
Great.
My tits
Okay.
are going to be done. My eyes are going to be lifted. I'm going to have liposuction, all of it. Like I'm highly invested in looking like the best version of myself for my entire life. I identify as an intelligent, well-spoken, deeply caring, empathetic person, but I'm also highly aware of the fact that like when you're a woman in the world, you can have all of those things, but people are still really only going to focus on your appearance first and foremost. It is what it is. So for me, The decision to not get Botox or filler isn't me saying that I think anybody who does that stuff is bad or wrong. I have just gotten really fed up with seeing a certain type of face
Yeah.
everywhere. And I don't know if this is like a result of post-COVID. We all live on the computer. It's how we communicate, it's how we work. I don't know if it's social media. I don't know if it's reality TV. It could be all of those things put together. But recently, I just started noticing that women of a certain age, especially who live in like New York or LA and like work in entertainment, you're in the minority if you don't have Botox or filler.
Yeah.
And it started to make me wonder if I was somehow falling behind not having it, or if I was somehow disservicing myself by not getting these things because I wasn't looking like the best version of myself by being natural. I've never once looked in the mirror and thought, I really need this. I'm not happy with the way that I look. And if I felt that way, I would probably have a different viewpoint. But it just made me really upset that the norm for young women has become alteration. And I don't even know that we genuinely want to look like the best version of ourselves by getting Botox and filler. I think it's more like we just want to look the way everybody else that we're getting exposed to seems to look. It's like not dissimilar from being rail thin in the 90s or having skinny eyebrows or wanting to get a BBL because the Kardashians have them. Like, in a way, it almost feels like facial alteration is like a beauty trend. And that's what I'm against, is like not embracing all of the quirks that make us us. But if I got to the point where I looked in the mirror and I was like, you know what? I can't put my best foot forward every day because I can't look at anything other than my 11s, or I feel like my nasolabial folds are saggy or whatever. Like, I would do something about it because I am aware of the fact that we only have one life and it's important to feel as though we're embracing it every day. So if we speak in 5 years, I could have a completely different view, but it felt important to kind of take a stand against making major facial alterations just because everybody else is doing it. And there's this weird kind of like silent peer pressure. And when I got the opportunity to speak about it with the LA Times, I was happy to have the platform. But, you know, I made a video on my own Instagram also kind of clarifying that I don't think it's crazy for a 30-year-old to not have Botox and filler. It's just, as I mentioned, everyone else seems to think it's crazy. And I wanted to encourage people to think about why that is.
Well, I think about like Kylie Jenner specifically, who has gotten an extreme amount of work before the age of 25 and also had 2 children before the age of 25. And I don't have any children. I've just done IVF, which is like fucking the hormonal nightmare of a lifetime, and
Yeah.
completely, and also like changed my body.
Yeah.
Like, I haven't even had a fucking child, and the IVF alone. And so I think about the hormones and the pure, like the sheer amount of work that that young woman has gotten done. And I'm like, fuck, man. Like, what kind of example is that setting? Like, cause that's really young, you know? I mean, now the thing in LA, when you get to a certain age, is like everyone's getting a fucking facelift. And I'm 39. So my peer group are 40s, whatever. And it's crazy. First of all, the financial investment is absolutely
Oh,
fucking psychotic.
egregious.
But it's like, whoa. I mean, it's so insane. So I like that you commented on, I mean, your skin is like actual pure glass. So I think that
You.
would, for me, I'm like, okay, blah, blah, blah. She's not into filler and face, like, blah, blah, blah. Tell me what the fuck you're doing to your face. And I mean, that's where I think the like positive gossip where I'm like, hey, like this skin thing works, or like you don't really need to do that. Like that's where I think we can all help each other out a little bit more. But it is interesting. Like I think with Bravo, which, you know, I was affiliated with obviously for quite some time. Like I look at some of those women and I'm like, holy shit. Like
Mhm.
this is what you're putting out there. The Kardashians. You're right. I think being on the like phones 24/7, it's really altered the way we want to appear, the way we look at people. But I liken it almost to, and please go down this rabbit hole. Remember, it's not even 9 o'clock in the morning for me. I liken it to interior design and architecture.
Hmm.
Like all of these women are going to feel very much like the modern, awful McMansions in West Hollywood.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying?
I
And like,
really do.
and listen, I've been getting Botox and I didn't start getting any filler till I was like 36 or so. And here's my thing. I actually haven't really talked about this. Do not, if you decide to do filler, fine. My suggestion to you, to anybody, would do it every other year, maybe once. Like, that's the problem. It's also like the scheduling. People are getting Botox every fucking 3 months in their face. I'm like,
Addictive.
you guys,
Really addictive.
it's very addictive. It's also like not that great. However, I have to tell you, Ali, I look at pictures of myself from when I was like 28 and I'm almost 40 and I look better. Also, my net worth has gone up though. So I don't know if that's also the thing. Do you know what I'm saying?
I have so many opinions. I'm glad that we're talking about this because I think about this probably more than I should. Okay. So my hot take is that we look at our faces way too much, like way more than the universe ever intended us to. Like I did not know what a nasolabial fold was until Instagram decided that it was important for me to know what that was and then flooded my entire For You page with pictures with like celebrities' nasolabial folds circled and a description of what it was, which led me into my own bathroom to stare at my face and wonder whether or not I had them. I just, for all the reasons that we listed, some of which, are out of our control just because of the current state of the world, and some of which is like our own addictive tendencies, I think we have like a widespread mental illness as it pertains to our appearance because of how often we're looking at ourselves. But I want to go back to the Kylie Jenner thing for a second because I actually have a lot of sympathy for her. I think she's had a really difficult existence. If you remember when Kylie was on TV when she was young, the entire world couldn't stop talking about how ugly she was. Like it wasn't just that her lips were small. It was that basically everyone was saying that she looked like a naked mole rat. It was terrible. And then that happened for years and years and years in the most important.
And she was like 15, 16,
That's what I was
right?
going to say. The most important, vulnerable teenage years where like all of us hate ourselves as young women. And so it's like, not only do you feel insecure about your appearance innately, but the whole world is telling you that you're not good enough. So then when she's like, what, 18, all of a sudden she gets a bunch of alterations done to her face and body to fit what the world is telling her is not correct with her. And when she does that, all of a sudden, the world becomes obsessed with her, which essentially validates that, oh, she spent all this money and she got new tits and a new ass and a new waist and a new face. And now we're telling her that she's good enough. What kind of complex does that put onto a young...
I can't even imagine.
I can't imagine. And so, I'm definitely not one of those people who doesn't blame the Kardashians for setting a particular unhealthy beauty standard. And my problem isn't that they altered their faces and bodies. It's that they've lied about it incessantly. I think if they were honest, it would be a totally, totally different ballgame for me.
Well,
but
the
Kylie
same with
Jenner,
Ozempic. I mean, they have been on
totally.
Ozempic for years, which is fine. Listen.
Everyone who's taking Ozempic needs to admit to it. Seriously.
Yeah. Like, also, who gives a fuck? Also, people are using Ozempic in wildly different ways now. Even so, and the other thing is like, I also don't understand why people didn't realize that Ozempic has been around for many years.
Yes.
Like,
yes.
Respectfully, allegedly, Adele.
Yeah.
Like, fucking, what's her name? I've met her a bajillion. Rebel Wilson. Like,
yes.
it's like,
and like, God bless. Like, God
yeah, who
bless.
cares? Literally, who cares?
Who cares? My thing is that, like, I also just don't understand why Botox is the kind of thing where you can just drive into a random strip mall and get it now. And
which don't do that, by the way, everybody.
No, we do
don't
not.
Do that.
But you can, and it's become such a huge topical point of conversation, and everyone is very out and proud about what they get done. For some reason, there's still this taboo that surrounds bodies, and I'm having a hard time understanding why like one is considered acceptable to talk about and the other one isn't. But I really think, the same way that I'm like, if we all just admitted that we like to gossip, we'd have a healthier world, especially for women. I don't care what anybody does to their face or body. I want every woman to look in the mirror every single morning and feel like the baddest bitch who is capable of quite literally anything. And I don't care how you get there. My issue is that we are lying about it, and the lying and the omission is what's setting this insane standard that women in their late 20s, early 30s are thinking, well, if I have not altered myself in some capacity, if I'm not taking Ozempic, am I fat? If I'm not getting Botox or filler, am I ugly? And that's really the issue. And I think my obsession with like the lack of honesty in society, not to bring it back to my podcast, is what the biggest motivator was for me in creating this safe space where we could all be radically honest. And my hope in allowing people to anonymously confess is that one day the topics that are now seen as taboo won't be taboo, and no one will feel like they need to be anonymous to talk about these things. But yeah, I mean, not to be dramatic, but I really feel like we do have like a widespread mental illness, and I don't really know how we're gonna get out of it.
I don't think we are. I mean, I gotta tell you, like, I posted this episode clip from Cool Cool Cool, and I don't even know what viral means anymore, but it has like over a million blah, blah, blah views. But the fucking hate speech, that's also the mental illness. And
Yeah.
it's men, mostly, it's men commenting how ugly and what hags we are. And then it's
Yeah.
white, straight, cis women telling us that like we're horrible human beings for like having opinions. I'm like, oh, this is cool. Like, first, and also I'm really petty and I don't give a shit. And so I comment to everyone. And then I've talked about this recently. Now I'm on this like thing, especially with the men. I go and I friend them, and then I find their wives or their family members and I friend them. And then I like spook them out and say, hey, Jared, like, oh my God, your wife Krista is so pretty. Like, what's your next vacation? Then they freak out and then they block me. And that's like
The
what
wildest
life
thing.
is worth living for. Like, if you want to know my humblest of opinions, is like
Yeah.
scaring people on the internet that have
Love
the
it.
audacity to say fucked up shit. But I also, I mean, you are at the forefront of a really important sector of modeling, which is hand modeling.
Oh my
And
God.
I have so many questions.
Understandably.
I really think of you guys as having to constantly moisturize, constantly get a manicure, but not too many manicures. You can't really have polish. Like, I don't think the hard work of hand modeling really gets discussed enough, quite frankly. How did you get into hand modeling? Along with modeling, because, like, look at you, obviously, but the hand modeling is too good. I can't.
I've had a lot more success as a hand model and a parts model than I ever did as a quote unquote real model. And the older I get, the more grateful I am to have a job that pays me a really nice chunk of change to just like show up and stick my hand in a camera. I always tell people I give hand jobs for a living, and it's honestly not incorrect. So how did I get into this? As part of the casting process, they always ask you to do, left, right, front, back, and then you're supposed to show your hands to the camera. And I had an agent that saw my hands and was like, oh, wow, you have really nice hands. Like, maybe we should pursue this. But I actually didn't realize that it was like a booming niche industry
And no,
until
it is, because huge. That's why when I saw that, I was like, oh my God, we have to talk about this, because this is like hilarious. Like, I made so much money in my early 20s as a fit model, which is like also that's a whole nother world. But
yeah.
like, the hand modeling is too good, Ali. Like,
Yeah.
it's
So let
genius.
me
It's
set the
amazing.
scene for you. I dabbled for a lot of years. I dabbled in hand modeling. Like every once in a while, a really good gig would come around. So, I've done AccuView contact lenses. I held a hedgehog for Johnson and Johnson. What did I do? I did Buffalo Wild Wings. And then this past March, I was on set for Captain D's, which we don't even have in New York. It's like a southeastern fast food chain. That's a whole other conversation as to why casting directors see my hands and they're like, fast food. But I was on set. The other model was like a really lovely middle-aged guy. And we were just talking about who represents us. And he was like, oh, you know that there are agencies that just represent parts. And I actually didn't. I always thought that the parts modeling was just a subdivision of like traditional commercial lifestyle modeling. So I looked up this agent that he mentioned to me, and she was fully written about in Vogue as being like the most powerful hand agent. So I wrote to her and I sent her pictures and videos of my past jobs, a description of myself, not my body measurements, but my hand measurements. What's my ring size? What's my glove size? What's, tip to wrist? How big is it? And then we ended up having a meeting just like the one you and I are having right now. And she asked me to put my hands in the camera so that she could see them. And she goes, they'll do. And I was like, okay. And I guess they're doing enough because I've actually been quite successful since signing with her. But yeah, this is like a
That's
highly
amazing.
powerful arts agent who has been featured in Vogue. But since signing with her, it's like I've worked for all of the brands that I've always dreamed of working with. Like I just modeled for Steve Madden, I've modeled for Revlon, I've done all the kind of fun girly brands, but it's never my full face and body. It's always like hand, arm, shoulder, jawline. And so, I always thought that maybe being evaluated for parts of me that were not just like whether or not I fit the bill face or body wise, you realize that you become more insecure about parts of your body that you never thought of before. Like if you have a double chin and if your neck is long enough and if your hands are elegant enough, it's insane. I would not recommend any facet of the modeling industry to anyone. I actually think it's like the least glamorous industry, despite what people want you to think. But it is kind of lit that like I get to hold a pita sandwich for 3 hours and get paid a really nice chunk of change and then come home and sleep for the rest of the
No,
day.
it's honestly, it's amazing.
It's
I just, if there was ever anything to do, that's what I would do. But do you have to wear like sunscreen on your hands every day?
I wear SPF 100 sunscreen on my hands every single day. And you asked me about like my secrets for my face.
Yes.
The number one
Let's hear
thing
it.
do that I think has really like slowed down my fine line process is I wear SPF 100 on my face and neck every single day. You actually can't get it in the States because, of course, the States are so fucked up. They classify sunscreen as medication, so it's regulated and you can't get over, I think it's like 65 or something like that. In the US, you have to get a prescription from a doctor to get 100. But if you go to Europe, they sell SPF 100 in pharmacies. So I went to Europe this past summer, stocked up on SPF 100 sunscreen. And I was watching all the videos on TikTok of like, European pharmacy haul, French pharmacy haul, Italian pharmacy haul. And no one was talking about the SPF 100 sunscreen. But I wear it on my face, neck, and hands every single day. And I guarantee you and I can have this same conversation 5 years from now and my face is still going to be doing what it needs to do. And I have all sorts of tips and tricks I can share. But like the number one thing that no one seems to talk about is really good quality sunscreen.
Well, it's so interesting because that's my kink. And I just went to Italy and we had a layover in Charles de Gaulle. And I'm like, honey, we're buying the sunscreen. So funny enough, I just bought a fuck ton of sunscreen, but I'm almost already out of it because I like this one. It's 50. It's not 100, but I wear it every day.
Jack
And
it
it's
up to 100. I'm telling you, jack that up to 100. It's going to change your life. It really will.
okay. Well, next time you go to Europe, will you get me some and will you just
Yes,
FedEx it to me?
I'm gonna write to every girl I know and I'm gonna be like, who wants sunscreen? Place your orders.
Because it is so fucked up. And actually, funny enough, Obama was trying really during both of his terms to change those SPF laws. I don't know if you're
Wait, was
aware
he
of that.
actually? I did not know that.
He was very, very invested in trying to alter these SPF laws. And I do know I'm also a sunscreen gal. We have not changed the law for SPF since since I believe 93.
That's disturbing.
So anyway, and also like our ozone layer like doesn't work. But yes, you and I, we are of like minds. All of my makeup has SPF in it. Like
I'm drowning in it constantly. I'm drowning in it. And I think it's so important. So yeah, I put that on my hands. And then also when I was on said Euro trip this summer, anytime I sat by the pool, I had these really crazy Michael Jackson gloves that I would wear. I can send you a picture of me wearing the gloves. Like imagine me in like the tiniest bikini and Michael Jackson gloves. And also I'm absurd, right?
I love it. I love it.
Face, neck, and chest, and then the rest of me is covered in like oil. But I don't care about neck down. I don't care how that ends up looking. I want to enjoy my life and sit in the sun and eat and drink. But chest up. I need it to look a certain way. And I even just on a day-to-day basis, I swear to God, I have had to spend less money on skincare and less money on treatments because I wear sunscreen and drink an ungodly amount of water. And of course, nobody wants to talk about that because it's not sexy and it doesn't equate to like sales in the beauty industry. But I think the same way that I think everyone should gossip, I think everybody should wear SPF 100 if they can get their hands on it, or at least SPF 50 every single day and drink more water. And I think we would all be astounded at how many less products we need.
I mean, it's going to make me really jealous, but you need to be friends with my friend in New York, Jillian Gottlieb.
Set us up. I love Stranger Danger with
She is this like skincare guru, and she's an actress and she's hysterical. And she goes after MLMs on the internet, and you will love her. And I will DM
Oh my
you her
God,
profile.
wait, I love that.
Speaking of going after people and I don't know, just sheer domination, we must circle back to your very educated theory, in my opinion, that Melania Trump is Donald's dom.
I will stand by this theory until the day that I die.
All right,
It's
give
like,
us like point by point. Like if I'm like, okay, elevator pitch, give me why you believe Melania Trump is Donald's dom. Go.
so I started getting into this because I heard that Melania asked CNN for $250,000 to appear to promote her memoir. And everybody knows that ethical newsrooms do not pay public figures, especially not ones that are in politics, to show up. You just do because it's fucking CNN. And I was like, the audacity for this woman to ask for 250K, there must be a bigger story here. So that led me to realizing that anytime she has been seen at a major Republican event or any major political event with Trump, she has been paid between $230,000 and $250,000. That is her appearance.
Who's paying her?
Trump. If you look at his financial records, he is the person who is paying her. And then somehow I went from her appearance fee to studying her shoe collection. And I saw how effortlessly she walked around in Louboutin So Kate's, which is like not a normal thing to do. Civilian women cannot walk around in 6-inch heels and make it look effortless.
Only other person who can do that is Zendaya. And that is because if you look at that interview with La Roche, which was amazing, on a Monday's Cutting Room Floor, another amazing podcast, only available on Patreon. Sorry, we got to shout out all the fashion girlies. Is La Roche said that he literally like borderline conditioned Zendaya as a child, almost as if she was a ballerina in point shoes for So Kate. So Kate's are the most uncomfortable fucking shoes that have ever existed. However, they are the sexiest. Anyway,
They're the sexiest.
Continue.
They are my pride and joy, but you can't really walk in them. You can just crawl. So the fact that Melania is walking around in rainy conditions, wet conditions, unfavorable conditions, and she's making it look like nothing. Yeah, that spoke volumes to me. Her shoe collection is positively evil, and I'm obsessed with it. So, basically in short, right? I don't think Trump had ever encountered a woman who genuinely wasn't interested in him. Trump grew up incredibly spoiled. He got whatever he wanted handed to him on a silver platter. We know about all of the women who either fell for his charms organically, God knows why, or, fell for what he could offer them. And I think Melania was the first woman he ever met who truly wanted nothing to do with him. There's also confirmation that when they first met at a party, she wanted nothing to do with him. And he was like, oh, can you give me your number? And she was like, no, I'm not going to give you my number, but you can give me your number. And then she waited a week and she finally called him. And so I think he was just enthralled with this idea that there was a person in the world who was stunningly beautiful. Sorry, we have to give that to her, who didn't give a fuck who he was, who his family was, how much money he had. And I think he really got off on that. And that's kind of the nature of the dom sub dynamic. It tends to be a super powerful man with a lot of responsibilities, a lot of money, a lot of access, who kind of just is surrounded by yes men, and in his personal time wants a woman to stomp on him physically and emotionally and tell him that he's worthless. I don't want to spoil everything because I do want people to actually go and watch the videos. They are absolutely my pride and joy.
They are amazing.
Asking myself the conspiracy theory Barbara Walters, but the further into it you get, the more you realize that it's absurd, but it's also not. And
I agree.
I intend to make these videos for as long as I can before TikTok literally removes me from the platform.
Thank you so much. You really are a national treasure for these videos, and we will definitely socialize them when this episode comes out. For me, the fin dom of it all is like
incredible.
Chef's kiss, like, because there's no way she's fucking that guy. There's like fundamental. I would even argue they may never have actually physically had sex together.
Oh, Liz, you bring me to the most important part, right? You know how Trump keeps calling himself the father of IVF or the God grandfather?
I know. Oh, I know.
I don't think that's him trying to appeal to female voters who are on the fence. I think he's telling the truth about how Barron was conceived.
Yeah, doy. And I also just think, and I also, IVF is so fucking gnarly. And I bet like she just cuckolded him. Like, and that is the only solace that I get in any of the world being completely on fire is that she, like, her eye rolls and her just like literal disgust.
Hates him, like actually hates him. But listen, I could potentially, not to say that I would ever engage with Trump, because I think that's where my boundaries are, but if I had a $250,000 appearance fee, I could see myself for a period of time dating a man who was less than stellar. And anybody who's going to hear me say that and wants to judge me and says that I have no morals, $250,000 per appearance is not
First
Trump change.
First of all, ain't nobody judging you here. I'm telling you this. I married for love. That is the decision that I made.
That is the goal.
But you can be, that's your second marriage, babe. First marriage, money. You're hot. Look at those hands. Go for gold.
It's gonna be like this forever.
You know what? Here's eyes on the prize, Ali. I need you to get a dude with a yacht, and then I'll meet you in Greece. We'll whip around Milos. I'll get the sunscreen. I only need about 4 or 5 days. I can pay for my way on another island. Just give me a couple of days on the yacht. I'll behave. I know how to act. I was a debutante. I'm good.
Yeah,
I was.
You can't just drop that in and then not elaborate on it. I mean, I'm sure people who listen to your show have heard this story already, but like,
yeah, I was a deb. My sister was a deb. My cousin was a deb.
I thought that only happened in the South. Aren't you from San Fran?
Oh, honey, that's like old money. San Francisco.
I'm in shock.
Do you know who was a deb with my sister though?
Tell me now.
Olivia, or no, sorry, my cousin actually. The sister, yeah. That's a whole nother one that I actually can't say on here. I'm sure people can find it. Olivia Wilde.
That's so incredible.
And she was already married. So she was like, they were all 8, because you're like 18. It's basically your senior year of high school. And she was like already married to that Italian guy.
That is.
Oh, and I hated it. And I had a nose ring. And I'll never forget, because I got my nose pierced at 15, as one does that goes to boarding school. And I was like a menace to, just like you and I was like literal nightclubs, New York, London, San Francisco, LA at like 15 and 16 years old. Like really, I lived more of a life then than I ever fucking live now. But I had my nose pierced, and I'll never forget. I'm like walking out in my like Vera Wang, because it's so weird. You wear a wedding dress, and I'm like going, and I had just like smoked a fat fucking blunt. The girls are doing coke. I'm like drinking like Moe, like on the fucking roof. But it's so out of control. And I'm like going out to like be presented with my father and my aunt, who just passed away, who was the most savage motherfucker on the planet. Best friends with Hillary Clinton, like a crazy person. Literally tries to pluck it out of my nose. Yeah. But it didn't come out. And I looked at her and I go, "Don't you touch my face." And I like walked out. And I think she always respected me for it.
Congratulations, Liz. Not only did you just inspire me for a new Anonymous Confessions podcast episode, but you also just landed yourself a guest slot on my show, because we are going to need to dive really deep into this. I can't believe I never thought about doing an episode about this before.
About debutantes? Babe. Okay, first of all, that's just like a little boop, boop. Off the record. You want to go hard, especially like New York fashion, like New York girl. I will be your fucking docs. I will tell you it all. And it's really deep and it's really crazy and it's very documented. Also like New York, San Francisco society. I mean, yeah, we can go for days.
Oh, I'm so ready.
For days, because they're all in plain sight.
You just have to know where to look. And that's why we said, conspiracy theories are rooted in truth.
Not all of them, but many of them. Many of them.
I don't think that the government was behind 9/11. I definitely think that Auschwitz was a real place. But do I think that the Dom sub Melania Trump, Donald Trump dynamic is far-fetched? I really don't. Do you know what I mean? There's levels to the conspiracy game.
Wow, what a place to end. Ali, you are the best that ever was.
Thank you.
Hey moms, looking for some lighthearted guidance on this crazy journey we call parenting?
Join me, Sabrina Kohlberg,
And me, Andy Mitchell, for Pop Culture Moms,
where each week we talk about what we're watching
and examine our favorite pop culture moms up close to try to pick up some parenting hacks along the way.
Come laugh, learn, and grow with us as we look for the best tips.
And maybe a few what not to do's from our favorite fictional moms.
From Good Morning America and ABC Audio.
Pop Culture Moms. Find it wherever you get your podcasts.